Chapter 21. Cassie. "There's something wrong," I said. "Do you think? There's plenty wrong," Rachel said. "Marco and I get shot at. Jake gets shot at. We got some kind of cult. My cousin has a ray gun and is shooting it while cops stand around and do nothing. Marco's mom is walking around alive wearing a wig." Jake came over and took my hand and bent down to look into my eyes. It was so sweet, and I so needed it. "Cassie, what do you mean?" Jake asked. I felt wetness on my cheeks. Why was I crying? I was the only one who hadn't been shot at so far. "I thought I was going nuts," I said. "Ever since, I don't know, for weeks I've had this feeling deep down inside that things weren't right. There's supposed..." I let go of Jake and threw up my hands. "I can't explain it. Just that everything is wrong. This alien, I heard him talking, kind of, only he was out in the water somewhere. And I have these dreams, these amazing dreams where I'm not me. I'm an animal. A bug, sometimes. And I'm scared. Or a wolf. Or a bird." I spotted Marco rolling his eyes. I also spotted Rachel sending him a keep-your-mouth-shut look. But Jake looked at his hands like he'd never seen them before. "Or a tiger," he whispered to himself. And once more I was drawn to look up at a particular spot in the rafters. Just now, I had the feeling that someone was missing. Two someones. The alien is one. He's supposed to be here, and I know this sounds crazy. "No, sounds perfectly sensible to me," Marco said, not quite under his breath. "There's supposed to be a bird, a big one, right up there. Anyway, just now when you said Mr. Visser, I got this chill. Somehow he's part of it too." "Where are Mulder and Scully?" Marco wondered. Jake nodded, like he half believed. But he looked away, too, like you do when someone says something crazy. "You had a bad feeling from the start about the sharing." Pity. Great. Rachel had this angry, concerned look, like she didn't know what to say or do to help me out, but she'd gladly yell at anyone who gave me any trouble. I'd just spilled my guts, and the result was that the three of them, including my best friend and the guy I liked more than ever, were all thinking I needed to see a shrink. "Oh, man," I said. "I am losing it, aren't I?" To my surprise, it was Marco who came to my defense, in his own way. "Yeah, you are losing it. You're crazy, insane, nuts. The only thing crazier than what you said is some guy who thinks that his big brother, the assistant principal, and Tobias, the mega dweeb, are shooting up a TV studio. And the only thing crazier than that is some kid who thinks his dead mom is running around town with laser-shooting bodyguards." "We have to do something," Rachel said decisively. "Do what?" I asked her. "I don't know. Something. There really is some kind of conspiracy. I mean, what are we supposed to do? Just do nothing?" Marco said. "Rachel, what are the four of us going to do?" "I don't know," she yelled in frustration. "Something. Jake, what do we do?" "Yeah, what do we do, Big Jake?" Marco asked, half mocking. "What do you mean, what do we do?" Jake shot back. "Why are you asking me?" Marco shrugged. "You're the leader, man." "What are you talking about? The leader of what? And why am I the leader?" "Because you are," I said. The words were out of my mouth before I could think about them. I felt as if I was a judge and had just passed sentence on Jake. Marco jerked his thumb at me. what the crazy chick said. Because you are. Jake looked at Rachel, dumbfounded. Rachel looked at me. An eerie look, like she was listening to me talk, only I wasn't saying anything. Then Rachel said, "What do we do, Jake?" For a long minute, it felt as if the entire barn was frozen. The three of us looked at Jake. He looked back at us, each in turn, this helpless, almost hopeless look on his face. And then he said, "We have to find out what's going on. We start with Tom. He's the obvious target." Jake, decisive, once the moment for decision arrived. "Let's grab him, tie him down, threaten to give him up to the FBI unless he tells us what's up," Rachel said. Rachel, bold, ready to act regardless of consequences. "If he really shot someone, Tom's dangerous," Marco disagreed, "which means whatever we do has to be subtle. If there's some kind of conspiracy involving the sharing, we're not going to know if anyone we talk to is hooked up with them. We need proof before we make a move." Marco, cautious and clever. A chill crawled up my spine. I felt as if the universe had just shifted. Like for weeks, I'd been riding a bike with the chain always slipping. And like the chain had just caught again. Things weren't right. Not right. But more right than they'd been since we'd left the mall together.
Chapter 22. Tobias. Day 34. I was helpless, powerless, unable to move an eye, unable to lift a finger, unable to speak, unable to alter a facial expression, to smile, frown, give any sign that I was alive within my own body, a captive inside my own brain. I had watched, helpless to cry out, as the Yerks had dragged the poor men and women from the Channel 7 studio into vans, had driven them at breakneck speed toward a water tower that concealed a secret entrance to the vast underground complex of the Yerk pool. I'd been unable to cry out in horror as one by one they were dragged, kicking and crying and begging down the steel pier. The Hork-Bajir controllers had held them tight and kicked them to their knees and shoved the heads down into that seething cesspool. Every one of them was infested. Every one would now agree on the same cover story to explain away the odd appearance of the blue-furred alien. No charges would be filed. The guard Tom had shot survived, but would never be free. He was infested in his hospital bed. I was there, observing. And now I was in my room, at home. Odret was still playing the role of Tobias, still being me. Odret, the Yerk, was growing ever more nervous. I could sense his emotions at times. Sometimes he would sift through my memories, looking for a thrill, an escape, like someone scanning the shelves at Blockbuster, looking for a movie to take his mind off his troubles. I had to laugh, down in my corner of powerlessness. Odret had the wrong host if he wanted a lot of good times. He was nervous because of Visser 3. The Visser was not behaving as he should, somehow. It wasn't anything obvious, more a question of something missing. For one thing, Visser 3 had a reputation. He was notoriously volatile. He would blow up over very little. But he was treating Odret with elaborate courtesy, allowing Odret access to anything and everything, not even making an effort to conceal disasters like the sudden appearance of an Andalite. Why? "What a pathetic life you've led, Tobias," Odret said to me. "I guess I have. I find nothing in your memories worth seeing again. Nothing was worth seeing a first time." Well, that's how it is, right? The sharing is a magnet for losers. They go for the weak. So what did you expect? To say that I hated myself would be an understatement. Odret had rifled through my memories, each more embarrassing than the one before. I'd had to relive too many things I had tried to forget. Most painful of all was the image of myself swallowing everything the sharing told me. I had walked willingly to my own destruction. At the time, I'd seen no alternative. Now I saw nothing but alternatives. Was my home a dreary, awful place? Yes. Was I somehow marked as a bully magnet? Yes. Was I different, strange, not quite normal? Yes. And to fight all of that, I had destroyed myself. Brilliant, Tobias. Brilliant. All of life's pains combined could not have equaled what I now endured. Even now, no easy answers leaped to mind. I could not easily have stood the bullying. I could not easily have survived the loneliness. In my fantasies, I could construct fantastic escapes, but in reality, there was no easy way. My life was non-fiction, not some story where the endings are always happy. I couldn't simply become a different person. I couldn't just have some great insight that would save me from myself. All I could have done, really, was wait. I could have endured. I saw that now. It wasn't a dramatic answer. It wasn't exactly inspiring. Endure, outlast, outwait. I might have been able to do that. I'm not a fool. I know that school was just a part of my life. You spend 18 years as a kid, then maybe 70 years as an adult. And what you are as a kid isn't what you'll be as an adult, not always anyway. Endure. I could have done that. Now, too late. My nose itched. I could not scratch it. Odret checked the clock. He got up, moved my legs and arms, aimed my eyes. I walked past my uncle. "Where do you think you're going?" "Out," my mouth said. "Not if I say you don't," he yelled. We ignored him. Out the door. A car appeared. I waited for it, impatient. Odret was hungry. He needed Kandrona rays. He needed to feed in the Yerk pool. The car drove us to McDonald's. We went in, went up to the counter and gave the counter girl there a code word. 10 minutes later, I stepped off the last stair and into the Yerk pool complex. I walked self-importantly toward the first pier. 2 Hork-Bajir were standing guard, checking people off on a sort of palm-top computer. "Odret 177, my mouth said. Suddenly, I was aware that 2 more Hork-Bajir were standing behind me, not in line to feed, standing poised, ready. I felt the sudden spike of Odret's fear. "Come with us," one of the Hork-Bajir said. Odret hesitated, but only for a moment. He knew it was pointless. The Hork-Bajir were controllers. They were following orders. Nothing he could say would change their minds. They marched me into one of the shabby temporary office buildings. It looked like an old barracks or something. Odret knew who was waiting for him. When the Hork-Bajir opened an office door, he was not at all surprised to see Visser 3 in his Andalite host body. Odret 177, he said. "Visser," Odret answered neutrally. "You've come to feed?" "Yes, obviously." "Then I'm sorry you've been at all delayed. Go. Enjoy." Odret did not move a muscle. He knew. Visser 3 laughed. "There is just one thing before you go, Odret. I'll need the truth." "What truth is that, Visser?" The Andalite body moved with liquid ease. The mouthless Andalite face moved to within inches of my own. Both main eyes and one of the stalk eyes bored into me. "I know that you are faithful to Visser 1, Odret. That much I know beyond all doubt." Odret's fear was seeping into me, releasing my own adrenaline. "I serve the Council of 13, Visser 3, as you know, and if any harm should come to me, they would investigate very thoroughly." The Visser was unimpressed. "As I said, Odret, I know you are Visser 1's minion. The question is about the order you transmitted to me, the order to avoid open war on the humans. I need to know whether that order came from the Council, or whether Visser 1 is its source." "I gave you the orders of the Council," my mouth said. "Maybe. And if so, I shall have to obey them. But if you speak only for Visser 1, well, that's a very different matter. I've told you..." The Andalite tail flew so fast that human eyes could not track it. The blade stopped a millimeter from my jugular vein. Yes, I know what you say now. The question is, what will you say in a day or so? What will you say when you are starving, Odret? I felt the Yeerk's fear rise several more notches to an intolerable level. You will pay for any harm that comes to me. You don't dare to defy the council this way. Very simple, Odret. Work for me and feed. Work for Visser One and starve. Take him away. I saw in Odret's mind's eye the results. So did he. Kandrona starvation was a horror that could not be endured. I looked straight into Visser III's Andalite eyes. The council knows nothing. Visser One hopes to convince them to restrain you. She sent me to delay you till the council issues the order. But it will come. Visser III nodded. As I suspected. I will have to move quickly. Very quickly, and present the council with a done deed. Then their order will be irrelevant. I work for you, then? Odret asked pitifully. Visser III laughed. You betrayed Visser One, Odret. Should I keep you around to betray me? Kill him. A Hork-Bajir pressed a Dracon beam against my head. I felt it. Felt Odret's terror. Felt my own shock, fear, regret. No, my mouth cried. No! Felt slight pressure as the Hork-Bajir's finger tightened. Felt...
Chapter 23. Jake. Day 40. It was almost impossible following Tom. We tried, but he could drive, and none of us could. Marco and I searched his room when he was out. Careful. Watch for any kind of little telltales he might leave, Marco said. What are you talking about? He might place a hair in a certain way, say, wedged into a drawer to see if it's been opened. I stared at my friend. What do you know about this? He grinned. I read, man. You know, books, John le Carré. Tradecraft, dude. It's all about tradecraft. I was going to ignore him. Then I saw the hair. It was wedged into the closet door so that if the door was opened, it would fall. Marco noticed and gave himself a little, am I smart or what, flourish. I took the hair, opened the closet, and searched it carefully. Nothing. I replaced the hair carefully and closed the door. Nothing here, man, Marco said. He's got these telltales around just to see if anyone's been here. He wants to know if he's suspected of anything, but he's not dumb enough to leave his ray gun just lying around. I led Marco back out into the hallway, down to my room. My dog Homer was asleep on my bed, snoring. Maybe we're just crazy, I said. The phone rang. I jumped about 2 feet. That's good, Jake. Very cool. Not at all like a guilty guy. I waited 2 rings to see if my folks were home and would pick up. Then I answered the call. It was Rachel. Turn on the TV, she said. Why? Just turn it on. Channel 9. I grabbed Marco and went to my parents' room, the nearest TV. Mine was being repaired. I flipped channels till I saw it. What's going on? Marco wondered. The screen showed a definitely inhuman face. 2 main eyes, 2 stalk eyes, no mouth, but it was speaking anyway. I scanned quickly. Channel 9, Channel 5, Channel 4, all the local channels were carrying the alien. All but Channel 7. Are a parasite species. What the... It was the alien, the blue deer, making his second televised appearance, but this time he wasn't on the news set. This was a remote, probably on tape. In their natural form, they are similar to your Earth slugs. They enter the body through the ear canal, releasing numbing chemicals to dull the pain. They wrap themselves around the brain and tie into all neural functions. He's not making any sounds. He doesn't even have a mouth. But I can hear him, Marco said. The phone on my parents' nightstand rang. I snatched it up. Yeah, Cassie, I see it. Humans who have been affected become controllers. They will appear to be normal, but they have lost all control of their bodies. These Yeerks... Yeerks? Marco echoed. Have already enslaved 3 sentient species, the Hork-Bajir, the Taxons, and the Geds. What? This is some kind of goof? I wondered. On all local channels at the same time? Marco said. All but Channel 7? This is like a tape loop or whatever. The stations aren't cutting in. They aren't, like, putting any scroll or bug or even a logo under the picture. What? Man, do you know anything? Marco said. All that stuff that's on the screen. You know, they'd put words under this, a title, like Alien Spokesman or whatever. No, man, this is bootleg. Someone is cutting this in. I nodded. Only Channel 7 was prepared. They thought this might happen. They were ready. I'm an Andalite. My people resist the Yeerks throughout the galaxy, but we are not here in sufficient strength, so you humans must fight. You must... The screen went blank. I hit the button on the remote. Channel 5, blank. They cut him off, I said. That's what Tom is, Jake. A Yeerk. Or what did he say? A controller. My mom, too. She's not dead, she's one of them. I lifted the phone receiver. You still there, Cassie? Yes. What does this all mean? I watched it, and every word he said, I was like, yeah, that's it. That's the truth. Jake? Uh-huh. We call him Axe. What? The alien? I know this sounds crazy, but we're supposed to know him. He's supposed to be our friend. We call him Axe, and sometimes he can become human. Crazy. Cassie, nothing sounds crazy. Not anymore. What do we do? She asked me. I looked at Marco. He jerked his chin toward the screen. 2 local news people were babbling and looking very lost. Don't know how this person or creature or prankster managed to... I flipped to another channel. Some Howard Stern type of prank. Viewers should not be alarmed. Another channel had gone back to Jenny Jones. I have to pee, Marco said. He went into my folks' bathroom. What do we do? Cassie repeated. I don't know, Cassie, but it's not a joke. It's real. We have to find out who is taking this seriously. Cops, FBI, whoever. We have to let them know what we know. About the sharing. About Chapman and that Mr. Visser and Tobias. And Tom? She asked softly. Yeah, I said. Yeah, Tom too. I hung up the phone feeling like 100-pound weight was suddenly sitting on my shoulders. A noise. I spun. Tom. He was standing in the doorway. I didn't have to ask whether he'd heard. He had. The ray gun in his hand told me he'd heard. I can kill you. Or you can come along peacefully, Tom said calmly. Your call. A flash of movement. Marco charging out of the bathroom, rushing Tom like a linebacker. Tom sidestepped, tripped Marco with a toe, and bashed the back of his head as he fell past. Marco lay sprawled, stunned on the floor. Let's go. You too, Marco. And don't make me mad. I have a very busy day ahead of me with all this. If you slow me down... He let the threat hang. Down the stairs. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't imagine it. Couldn't think of what to say to him. He wasn't him. I had no trouble believing that because there was no way Tom was doing this. No way. I wasn't even scared because I could not believe any of it. Impossible. Tom? Not even with an alien in his head. No matter what, Tom wasn't going to hurt us. Marco and I walked down the stairs, through the empty family room, the front door. I opened the door. A car was just screeching to a halt there to pick Tom up. The car door opened. A man's voice yelled, "Look out!" Tom flinched. Too late. The baseball bat came down hard on his gun hand. "Ah!" he yelled. The ray gun clattered down the steps. The bat came up fast, caught Tom in the face. Then 1, 2, 3. 3 stiff, hard blows and Tom was down, curled in a ball, groaning, eyes rolling, blood gushing from his nose and ear. I stared at my cousin. Rachel was breathing hard, but her outfit, hair, and makeup had remained perfect.
Chapter 24. Rachel. Tom was down. Someone was running from the car. Someone big. Jake dove, landed hard, but snatched up the ray gun. He rolled, came up to his knees, and yelled, "Freeze!" It was so NYPD Blue. The running man slowed, raised a weapon. "Shoot!" Marco yelled. "Phew!" Bright light stabbed from the weapon in Jake's hand. The man screamed. His left leg below the knee no longer existed. He fell and fired wildly. The ray sliced into the eaves of Jake's house. "The car!" I cried. Jake took aim, fired. Phew! A hole burned and sizzled in the car's engine compartment. Tom was getting up, staggering down the stairs, trying to catch us from behind. I swung low, caught him in one knee, hard. He went down. He wasn't going to be walking anytime soon. The injured guy from the car was groaning, rolling onto his side, ready to shoot again. I was on him. Wham! People will drop a weapon really fast if you hit their arm with a baseball bat. I grabbed the ray gun. The driver of the car was out on the street, running, yelling into a cell phone. "Shoot him!" I yelled at Jake. "No, he's leaving." I raised my newfound ray gun and took aim at the fleeing man. Jake yanked my arm upward as I squeezed the trigger. I sliced a couple of branches off an elm tree. "We don't shoot people in the back," Jake snapped. "And we don't shoot people who are willing to leave us alone." I shoved his hand away. "Hey, who died and made you president? What are you, the boss?" "Yes," he said. Then his expression softened. "And by the way, thanks." "No problem, cousin," I said. "What about Tom? What about that guy there?" "They'll have reinforcements here soon," Jake said. "We have to get out of here. Cassie, we have to get her before they do. Tom knows I was talking to her." Yeah, I agreed, feeling a sudden pang of worry for my best friend. I'd come to Jake's house right away, as soon as the alien was off the air. We lived just 2 blocks apart, less if you know the backyard routes. Cassie lived farther away. Tom had dragged himself painfully to the steps. He was sitting there holding his knee, not sure which part of him hurt worse. "You can run, but you can't hide," he said, spitting blood through his teeth. "We'll take you. We'll take you all." "Where's that baseball bat?" I wondered. "The soft invasion is over," Tom jeered. "The real war is about to begin. We'll have you all. You're our meat. You're our meat." "Come on," Jake said softly. "Quick, before another carload of—" "Forget carload," Marco said. He was looking up toward the sky. I followed the direction of his gaze. It was not a plane. It was not a weather balloon or swamp gas or a trick of the light. It looked like a stylized metal cockroach, only where there might have been legs, there were just 2 forward-aimed serrated spears. It was, beyond any doubt, an alien ship, and it was slowing as it approached Jake's house. "Run!" Jake yelled. "Yes, run, run, run!" "Ha ha ha!" Tom jeered giddily. "Run, humans, run!" Phew! Phew! 2 huge beams of light chewed furrows in the lawn on either side of us. We ran, across the lawn, the next lawn, the next lawn. Phew! Phew! A garage to our left blew apart, burning splinters. Marco tripped. I grabbed him and hauled him to his feet. We turned a corner. Jake yelled, "This way!" We scrambled over a fence, raced through a backyard. I jumped a big wheel. Another fence, taller, no problem. Amazing what you can do when you're being fired on by a spaceship hovering a few hundred feet up in the air. Phew! Phew! The pool in the next yard blew up in a geyser of steam. My face stung, eyes watered. We couldn't outrun this thing. There was no way. We were on foot. It flew. But I had underestimated Jake. He was heading for a little patch of woods over behind the community playground. The trees. He was looking for cover. Just one problem. That was 3 long blocks, and we were already getting tired. People were coming out of their houses, staring slack-jawed up at the spaceship. The aliens weren't even bothering to hide. Tom had told the truth. This was war. "Rachel, here! Stand! Aim!" Jake ordered. I stopped. We were back against a tin tool shed. The ship would reappear just over our heads as it came around for another shot. We'd see it just as it saw us. Jake and I held our ray guns straight up. Marco panted, bent over with hands on knees. Fire! The steel bugs slid into view. Our ray guns burned. The ship jerked. It didn't explode or anything, but it jerked visibly, like someone who's been slapped. The ship hauled away. We ran. 2 blocks before the ship found us again. Phew! Phew! 3 cars and a parked RV blew apart. The concussion knocked me down. I felt grass in my face. My ears were ringing like Quasimodo was in the bell tower. My skin was singed. My mind wouldn't come together. Little fragments of thoughts, little bits of me. I looked around. Jake was just getting up. He was slapping fire off his shirt tail. Marco was on his back like he was enjoying a day at the beach. I climbed up, woozy, fading in and out, but more or less in one piece. Marco, let's go! I yelled. I ran to him, stopped, looked down, not comprehending, not believing. Jake grabbed me from behind. Run! But Marco! Run! Just run! Jake sobbed. Run!
Chapter 25. Eximile. Day 41. Videotapes of the bug fighter were shown on TV. Endlessly, I watched in a portion of a large establishment called a Circuit City. Circuit City was devoted to archaic electronic devices, computers, video discs, music players. Humans in the establishment stared in disbelief. They shook their heads. They discussed among themselves. Some were of the opinion that these invaders were simply misunderstood, benign, but provoked by some obscure human behavior. They're advanced, right? I mean, look at that thing. If they're way beyond us and all, they must believe in peace. Yeah, they have a heck of a way of showing it. Blowing up a man's garage? And how about that RV? You think insurance is going to cover that? Either way, I'm buying that Sony big screen. I don't want to miss any of this. Yes, sir. Can I interest you in our extended warranty program? I had heard similar opinions from other humans. They assumed that technological superiority must necessarily be linked to moral superiority. A natural impulse, perhaps, for an ignorant and primitive species. Suddenly, all the many TVs went blank. The 2 humans used small handheld devices to change frequencies, but they too were non-functional. The entire establishment had grown very quiet. None of the electronic equipment was functioning. Power went out, one man said. The lights are still on. It's not the power. I used my human mouth to explain what should have been obvious. Electromagnetic pulse, I said. The Yerks have simply fired a burst of powerful radiation that has rendered primitive electronic devices inoperative. Radiation, is a complex word. You will discover that any device containing a simple human computer chip will have been overloaded. Chip is a very short word. The human looked at me in bewilderment. No TV? No TV, I confirmed. Why would they knock out the TV? Is it all the violent shows? Are they sending us a message? Yes, they are sending you a message, I said impatiently. The message is, we are coming to enslave and destroy you. I left the establishment. My duty was not clear. I could attempt to assist human efforts to resist the Yerks. But how? These people were so primitive their vulnerable circuits were unshielded. How could they resist the Yerks? Or I could try at all costs to contact the home world. The Yerks would move quickly to increase the pace of infestation now, and my own actions might have caused them to rush. How many Yerks would they have in Earth space? It could easily be 100,000, or twice that number. Their goal would be to secure the planet for additional shipments of Yerks. Newly arriving Yerks would be a mixed blessing for the enemy. The Yerks suffered from a lack of sufficient host bodies. Andalite intelligence had always estimated that fewer than 1 in 100 Yerks had a host. mostly Hork-Bajir, taxon, and Ged. Geds were severely limited, as were the taxons. The Hork-Bajir were excellent host bodies, but Andalite actions had severely reduced the number of surviving Hork-Bajir hosts. But here, on this planet, were nearly 6 billion potential hosts, more than enough to supply every living Yeerk with a human host. Humans were physically unimpressive, but they did have excellent hands and very good senses, all the Yeerks needed. 6 billion hosts. A planet stocked with sufficient raw materials for building ships. If the Yeerks took Earth and held it, they would be unstoppable. If only the Andalite fleet would arrive, it was a perfect opportunity. The Yeerks would rush transports full of Yeerks, as many as they could move. The ratio of unhosted Yeerks would rise in proportion to the number of hosted Yeerks. A fat target. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If Zero Space had not changed configuration, the fleet could arrive within weeks. If Zero Space was inherently unpredictable, altering and shifting randomly. A jump that might take a week one day could take a year the next. By now, the High Command realized that our task force was missing, but they might not know why. And they would certainly not guess that the Yeerks had located an almost perfect target species for massive infestation. The larger war could be won right here. Or lost right here. But the terrible fact, was that the Yeerks would be more vulnerable once they began shipping large numbers of Yeerks to this planet. And that would not happen until human resistance was subdued. That is an unhappy thought, I told myself. These are simple, primitive creatures, but I would not want to see them slaughtered to afford us a tactical advantage. What was I to do? Do both. Contact the fleet, then help the humans, and forget the fact that helping humans now might cause the Yeerks to be more cautious. Yes, that would be my plan. The policy of a half-trained Arist. How would I ever explain myself to my superiors? I could picture incredulous, outraged faces of great war princes staring at me and saying, "Your policy, Arist? Your policy? And when exactly did galactic policy fall into your hands?" I had walked from the circuit city down a hill, closer to what humans called a mall. I had a clear view of what happened next. Bug fighters began dropping from the clouds. They landed, forming a loose perimeter around the mall parking area. Hork-Bajir jumped out, armed with Dracon weapons. An interesting move. Yes, the Yeerks would be able to take several hundred humans at once. It made sense. Several human cars attempted to exit. They were blown apart. I had a perfect view as well of the black, dangerous shape that swooped confidently down from the blue sky and settled arrogantly atop the mall roof. A blade ship. The blade ship of Visser 3.
Chapter 26. Cassie. Marco was gone. He'd never even been a friend of mine, but now he was gone. Jake couldn't return home. Tom was there, and Jake had to worry now that his own parents were in the camp of the alien enemy. Rachel, too, was trapped. Where could she go? She had beaten Tom with a baseball bat. I called my parents and told them I couldn't come home either. Tom knew me as well. My parents demanded that I come home immediately. They told me that in all likelihood these aliens were friendly. This was all a wonderful opportunity for the human race. Maybe they were naive. Or maybe they had been taken too. Jake, Rachel, and I had wandered here and there. We had no real plan. What could we do? What could we do? 3 kids against the momentous events that were unfolding around us. The TV showed commentators endlessly discussing what it all meant. Some people believed these Yeerks were the hope of humanity. Some believed the Andalite who had hijacked local stations to broadcast his warning. Some thought it was all a monstrous prank. President Clinton urged everyone to remain calm. He said that, just in case, our military forces were being mobilized. There was a feeling of everything moving in slow motion, a feeling of a world hovering on the brink of something unprecedented, waiting. The three of us couldn't do much about any of that stuff. All we could do was keep moving and hope to keep living. We'd hidden in stores, in libraries, in the school, here and there, in plain sight during the day, under cover at night. "I'll grab us some munchies," Rachel said as Jake and I collapsed into the cheap plastic chairs at the mall food court. Jake looked unspeakably weary. There were dark bags under his eyes. The eyes themselves seemed to have caved in. He was scared. More, he was devastated. Marco was his lifelong friend. Tom was his brother. "I hope the animals are okay," I said. Jake didn't answer. "I mean, my folks will take care of them," I said. "They don't really need me." I saw Jake's eyes flicker. He was looking past me. I turned around. A group of people were rushing toward the mall exit door, their voices rising excitedly. They were rushing to see something. "What is it?" I asked. "Don't know." He stared. He couldn't see anything more than me, but he must have sensed. "Rachel!" he yelled. I spotted Rachel at the Taco Bell counter. She had caught the tone of Jake's cry. She snatched up the burritos she'd been paying for and came running. The crowd at the mall door came rushing back now, running away. Rachel met us as we started to run. "Rachel, you know this mall. Where can we hide?" Jake demanded. "Any of the stock rooms." No, too many people there." She looked around, frantically. "Furniture department at the department store. Big armoires and stuff. We can get inside." Scared as I was, I had to admire the girl. She knew them all. We started running, past Express, past some shoe store. People were screaming. Ahead, people running out of the Gap. Then it stepped into view. It had to be 7 feet tall. It had a tail with spikes like a dinosaur's, and big taloned feet to match. There were blades on its arms, legs, head. It was a monster of destruction, a creature from a nightmare. And I said, "Hork Bajir." No one asked how I knew. The Andalite had used the word on TV. And this, I knew, was a Hork Bajir. More of the monsters poured from the Gap. I should morph. What? What was I thinking about? Behind us, Hork Bajir coming up the aisles of the mall. Not after us. They were rounding everyone up, forming people into little groups and holding them under guard. "What do we do?" I cried. "We can't fight those things." "I'm going to try," Rachel said through gritted teeth. She drew a weapon from her waistband, one of the ray guns she and Jake had taken. She was grinning. She was vibrating with dangerous energy. Back out into the mall, Hork Bajir had cornered a lot of the shoppers. But other people were running around in panic. One had a gun. He fired at a nearby Hork Bajir. The Hork Bajir fired back. The man sizzled and disappeared. Rachel fired. The Hork Bajir emulated his own victim. "Up the escalator," Rachel said. We ran for the escalator. It was still operating. We ran, taking the moving steps 2 at a time. Then, at the lower landing, a Hork Bajir appeared. He leaped. Jake tried to fire, but the monster was on him. Jake and the Hork Bajir slammed back into Rachel and me. We rolled, bunched and tangled, while the rising steps kept punching me in the back. Jake had lost his weapon. Rachel had not, but she couldn't get a clear shot. I dug in my heels, braced her, and yelled, "Do it!" She fired. Choo! The Hork-Bajir sizzled. We were up and climbing the escalator to the next level. 2 more Hork-Bajir. Choo! Rachel fired. The Hork-Bajir fired. The escalator slammed us into one of the monsters as he was disintegrating. It was like grabbing an electrical power line. I was knocked flat. Rachel fell on top of me. I watched helplessly as her weapon clattered away. The escalator deposited us in a heap on the landing. Jake jumped up. The remaining Hork-Bajir loomed over him. Jake looked so small, so weak. There was nothing he could do. The monster was going to take us, infest us. The Yerk pool, that dark cavern, that hellish place. I saw it in my mind, but I had never seen it. Why? I asked the creature as he loomed over us. He did not answer. Instead, his head rolled off his shoulders, hit the escalator, and bounded heavily toward us. The forehead blades caught. It stopped, staring, expression unchanged. The body fell, but as it collapsed, a thin arm and many-fingered hand snatched the ray gun from its lifeless hand. We reached the top, and there, holding the weapon, was the blue centaur. The Andalite. He ignored us and started away, but 3 more Hork-Bajir were on him now. He whipped his tail. The closest Hork-Bajir fell, but the other 2 were too close to avoid. Slash! The Andalite's flank was deeply cut. The hand holding the weapon hung limp. Jake lunged, slid on the polished marble floor, slid beneath the staggering Andalite, tried to grab the weapon. But he was nearly stomped by flashing Andalite hooves and the huge Tyrannosaurus feet of the Hork-Bajir. That's when Rachel stepped swiftly behind one of the Hork-Bajir. She was carrying the head. The bladed Hork-Bajir head. She lifted it high and slammed it down, blades out. She buried the Hork-Bajir's head blades in his comrade. Ah! Jake yanked the weapon from the Andalite, spun and fired. Choo! A Hork-Bajir dropped, sizzling, seeming to fry as it disappeared. "Thank you," the Andalite said calmly. I bent over and threw up. "Give me the weapon, please," the alien demanded. "I don't think so," Jake snapped. "I am attempting to save your species," the Andalite said, "and I observe that you have lost 2 weapons already." Whap! His tail snapped like a bullwhip. It hit Jake's hand and knocked the weapon away. The Andalite snatched it up with his good hand. "And now a 3rd. Again, thank you." I said, "Axe! Axe! Axe him! Axe!" The word was there, on the tip of my tongue, but I couldn't quite reach it. The creature's stalk eyes jerked toward me. "Do we know each other?" "Yes," I said. I wiped the puke from my mouth with the back of my sleeve. "Not here. Not this way. I don't know how, but some way, somehow, yes, we know each other." He scanned behind himself with one stalk eye, raised the weapon, and fired over his shoulder. A Hork-Bajir took a glancing blow that disintegrated his right arm and shoulder. The creature toppled over the rail and fell. "Andalite!" it screamed. The effect of that one word was electric. The Hork-Bajir below us, who had not seen the battle on the 2nd floor, immediately forgot about their human captives. "Are you able to run on those 2 legs?" the Andalite asked skeptically. "Dude," Jake said, "we can fly on these 2 legs." "You must lead me to the roof of this structure." there is a very slight chance that we can succeed.
Chapter 27. Rachel. "Follow me," I said. I hauled toward the service corridor that would lead to the roof. All the bad guys were coming upstairs now. Up the stairs, up the escalators, even trying to jump the 15 feet or so straight up, and failing. It was insane. No way we'd make it. We were done for. We were dead, like Marco. And yet I was blazing. I was jazzed like nothing I've ever known before. I had gone after a 7-foot-tall alien monster and taken him down. Me! Narrow stairs ahead, crammed with what Cassie had called Hork-Bajir. The Andalite aimed and fired. Smart boy. He fired into the mass on the stairs, not the couple who'd already made it to the top. That would slow the ones coming up and make the couple already up here feel cut off. We raced past them. "There! That hallway, right by Sam Goody!" "Tsew! Tsew!" The glass front of the CD store blew into shards. Down the hallway. Panting, running, sneakers squeaking on tile. Down, past the bathrooms. Turn left. Tsew! Tsew! I felt the heat of it. Ha ha! Missed me! 10 feet to the door. I slammed hard against it. Backed off, scrabbled at the doorknob. "It's locked!" Flap! The Andalite's tail snapped. A gash appeared in the sheet metal of the door. I reared back and kicked it. It popped open. Inside, a metal stairway. 10 steps and a landing. 10 more and another landing. 10 more, and we were at the door that led outside onto the roof. "Axe, or whatever your name is, shoot the stairs," Jake yelled. The Andalite hesitated. I don't think he appreciated being told what to do. But Jake was right. The Andalite leaned slightly forward and fired at the stairs themselves. Teew! He held the trigger down till the metal twisted and bubbled and burned away. I had to pull back to avoid having my eyebrows scorched off. When I looked again, 2 flights of stairs were gone. The Andalite said, "When we exit, we will need to move swiftly and decisively. There is a ship. We are going to take it." "Say what?" I blurted. "Follow me." We opened the door and stepped out onto the acres of gravel roof. And there, 50 yards away, approximately on top of William Sonoma and Eddie Bauer, crouched a black ship that was all sharp edges and mean attitude. We started running, with the Andalite out front. There was a ramp leading up into the ship, 50 yards, and not a Hork-Bajir in sight, not a guard. Of course not, why bother? What kind of an idiot was going to try and run toward that ship? Our kind of idiot. The Andalite kicked up the gravel. We raced along behind him. Something was coming down the ramp. Tew! Now nothing was coming down the ramp. Under the shadow of the ship, we hit the ramp. Hork-Bajir above us. Tew! More, aiming at us. Yeah! I screamed and lunged. I felt the wind off the Hork-Bajir arm as it blew past me. I never felt the wrist blade. I hit the corrugated steel floor, rolled onto my side. Saw bright lights and moving shapes. The movements grew slower, slower. Stop.
Chapter 28. Jake. "Rachel!" I cried. Cassie was screaming like she'd never stop. I grabbed Cassie, pulled her to me, dragged her with me, couldn't look back, couldn't see what had happened to my beautiful cousin. Choo! The Andalite fired again and again. I saw a ray gun on the floor, clasped in a dead hand. I pried it free. I was holding Cassie by the hand, pulling her along with me. Choo! I felt the charge jolt my fingers. I let go of a hand that was no longer there. Cassie sizzled and disappeared, simply evaporated. I stared at the blank space where she had been. I stared at my hand. I was moaning, a weird sound. Moaning, like a hurt animal. No sound that any human would make. "Come," the Andalite snapped. I realized everything was quiet now. The Hork-Bajir bodies were everywhere. The air reeked of charred flesh. I followed the Andalite, stumbling blindly, down dim corridors, past locked steel hatches. A hatch opened. A Hork-Bajir head appeared. It stared in shock. "Andalite! Flap!" The Andalite struck. I realized now that it had been hurt again. It was staggering, bleeding, but determined. "The bridge. Have to reach the bridge." We emerged from the hallway into a wider, more open space. There were display monitors that seemed to hang, formless, in midair. 3 monstrously huge centipedes manned controls. And standing in the middle of it all was another Andalite, older-looking, different. The Andalite called Axe stopped suddenly. He was weaving like a drunk. "Visser 3, he said. "Yes, and you must be the Andalite who escaped from the wreck of the dome ship. How enterprising of you." "He's one of your people," I muttered. "No," the Andalite said. He sounded weary. "Looks can be deceiving." The Andalite raised his weapon. Flap! The creature called Visser 3 struck with his tail. The Andalite stared stupidly down with his main eyes at the stump of his arm. The Andalite was between me and Visser 3. I raised my own weapon. Visser 3 lunged. Fired. 2! Missed. Flap! I hit the ground. Then Cassie fired. 2! Cassie? Visser 3's upper body sizzled and disappeared. The deer-like lower half fell over lifeless. "No, no, no!" It was a voice that dripped sarcasm and contempt, but it was annoyed, too. "She's dead! The girl was dead! This is really too much!" Cassie came rushing over to me. She knelt down and helped me to my feet. The Andalite stared weirdly at me, and more so at Cassie. "It's breaking up," Cassie said. "What is?" She shook her head. "I don't know. I don't know what to call it, but it's falling apart." The Andalite calmly shot the 3 big centipedes. Then he stepped to the controls, and seconds later the bridge was sealed off. "They can break through eventually, but Yeerks are rigidly structured. All commands must come from the bridge. They will not have an auxiliary control." I hugged Cassie close, disbelieving. I'd seen her die. Hadn't I? "What are we doing?" I asked the Andalite. "I am currently broadcasting a request for help to any and all Andalite fleet elements." "Your guys can save us?" "No," he said, "but they may be able to save your people. What we can do is make the arrival of the Andalite fleet less dangerous for them and more beneficial for your kind." "How are we going to do that?" The Andalite didn't answer. Instead, he ordered a transparent panel to appear. I was looking out at Earth. I could see the North American continent clearly. We had lifted off and flown into orbit without my noticing a thing. And then there was a gorilla. It was just there, squatting in the corner. "Oh, this is wrong!" the angry, grating voice from nowhere cried again. "This isn't it at all!" "What's that voice?" I asked. "And what's a gorilla doing here?" "Gorilla? I'm a gorilla? Ah! I'm a gorilla!" "Marco?" It was his voice, coming directly from the gorilla. "It's coming apart quickly now," Cassie said, still staring weirdly around like nothing she was seeing was real. "Axe, what is all this? You're the alien man. What is going on?" The Andalite winced a little at the question. Then, obviously reluctant to admit ignorance, he said, "I do not know." He looked at Cassie with both stalk eyes. "Perhaps she does." "It's all a part of it," Cassie said in a sort of whisper. "It's coming apart." "There it is, the Yeerk pool ship," the Andalite announced. "What now?" I demanded. "Now I will aim every weapon this ship possesses, and it possesses a great many very powerful weapons, and I will annihilate the pool ship and every Yeerk on it. In 5 seconds. 4, 3. Chapter 29. Jake. 2. Oh, all right, the disembodied voice cried. "Stop it, stop it!" A thing, an alien, I suppose. Something, anyway, that looked an awful lot like a small dinosaur with the skin of a prune, appeared. The Andalite stepped back from the controls, ready to shoot this latest enemy. He fired. The energy beam traveled half the distance to the alien, then froze. Simply stopped.
"It was the girl, wasn't it?"
The prune thing said, rolling its green-rimmed eyes upward.
"She corrupted the time flow."
Now a second figure appeared. He could have been a little old man, if you ignored the fact that he was kind of bluish and glowing. I had this sense that he was no such thing, but that was his appearance. This creature, this old man, laughed.
"It's not so easy, is it, Drode?"
"You cheated me, Elemist,"
the Drode snapped.
"We had a deal, a trade-off. You were allowed to meddle with the timeline in the Falakadrath situation. And we, my master Krayak and I, were to be allowed to tempt this young jackal here."
He stabbed a finger at me.
"I kept my bargain,"
the Elemist said.
"I've done nothing to bring about this result. The girl is an anomaly. She is subtemporally grounded. You were careless."
"She's a freak of nature!"
the Drode screamed. The Elemist nodded.
"Yes, she is."
Marco said, "What is going on here?" He was no longer a gorilla. "I'm pretty sure I was dead. Then I'm a gorilla."
"Oh, I see it now. I see it now,"
the Drode said, ignoring Marco, ignoring all of us.
"Subtle as always, Elemist. Your meddling came before, didn't it? How could we not have seen it? Elfangor's brother, his time-shifted son, this anomalous girl here, and the son of Visser One's host body. A group of 6 supposedly random humans that contains those 4. You stacked the deck."
"Did I?"
the Elemist laughed.
"That would have been very clever of me."
The Drode spat in disgust.
"You knew the girl was an anomaly. You knew she was subtemporally grounded. And you knew that whatever timeline I built, her presence would eventually destabilize it. She knew from the start that the timeline had shifted. She felt it. I might as well have terminated this exercise then. I saw the sudden, inexplicable transportation of the mother. I thought, well, it's a glitch. The hands morphing to tiger. All the little breakdowns of logic and sequence. I still thought it might hold together."
Cassie said, "Is anyone going to tell us what is going on here?" The Elemist winked at her, and suddenly, alive, in the room with us, were Rachel and that kid, Tobias.
"Does this feel more right, Cassie?"
the Elemist asked. She nodded. "This is everyone. Only Tobias should be—" As I watched in amazement, Tobias seemed to melt, to shift, to dwindle. In seconds, there was a hawk where he had been.
"Most creatures live entirely within their timeline,"
the Elemist said.
"Like a person trapped in a single room. They see only what is within those 4 walls. Others, like yourself, Cassie, can see beyond those walls, can see other rooms as though the walls were translucent. You felt the change. You sensed that things were not right. You could see, only dimly, but still you could see beyond. You could see what should be, where you belonged. And without consciously knowing it, you were working to repair what had been torn apart, to reconstitute time as it should have been. You were a virus in the software. You degraded the subtle workings of the Drode's artificial time shunt."
"I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about," Cassie said.
"You were in this timeline, but of another. That is an anomaly, an impossibility. One of the 2 timelines was doomed to fail. You grounded the true timeline, and thus this timeline began to fall to pieces."
"Who are you 2? I demanded of the Elemist and the Drode.
"He's an old cheat,"
the Drode snapped.
"There are rules, Elemist."
"Yes, and I obeyed them. I allowed you to create this alternate timeline, and in this timeline these humans and this Andalite came very close to annihilating the Yeerk presence. You suspended the exercise, not me. You can continue this timeline or allow these young ones to return to their own times.
The droid's face was twisted with hatred.
Krayak will have him yet!
He was talking about me. I knew it suddenly. I knew who I was. I knew it all. I was myself once more, leader of the Animorphs. With that knowledge came a sledgehammer of guilt. It was all my fault. I had weakened. I'd said yes to the droid. I'd given in. Marco, Rachel, Cassie, Tobias, all dead, at least in this reality, because I had weakened and taken the droid's offer.
Perhaps, droid. Perhaps Krayak will have him,
the Ellimist said.
But then again, perhaps he will have Krayak.
The droid disappeared. The 6 of us, the Animorphs, stood there on the wrecked bridge of the Blade ship with the nearly all-powerful creature called the Ellimist. At least we'd have won in this timeline, I said. He shook his head.
Yes, but you all would have died. And millions of humans, too, before the victory.
I gave in, I whispered. I gave in.
You have been strong for a long time,
he said. He shouldn't have to be, Rachel erupted angrily. None of us should have to. This is enough. This has gone on too long, Tobias said. I wouldn't have done it, would I? I couldn't have ever gone to the sharing. That was wrong. No way. Of course you wouldn't, Rachel growled. I said, Ellimist, is there anything better in our real timeline? Will it happen any better there? Will it at least ever end? The Ellimist looked at me, just at me. Sadly, I thought. Pitying.
It will end,
he said.
It will end.
I wanted to ask him more, but I knew that was all I'd get. So, what happens now? Cassie asked. The Ellimist took her hand and held it affectionately.
What will happen now? Only you will ever recall so much as a dim memory of this timeline.
Cassie nodded, as though she'd half expected him to say that. But I'll say nothing about it. Tobias can't know that he might have become a voluntary controller, and Jake can't know that he ever weakened enough to take the droid's deal.
You are wise,
the Ellimist said. Yeah, and I sure don't want to know that I ever dated Marco, Rachel added. How do we get back? I asked. How do we... Chapter 30. Jake. Day 0. Help me. I'm cold. Another battle. Another horror. Couldn't anything make it end? Was there no way out? Was I trapped? Fighting? Fighting till one by one my friends died or went nuts? I lay on my bed, stared up at the ceiling. Help me, please. I'm cold. Into the cave, Cassie. All for what? For nothing. To delay the Yeerks, but never to win. And someday to lose. Was there no way out?
There's always a way out, Jake the Mighty,
a voice said.
My lord Krayak holds out his omnipotent hand to you, Jake the Yeerk Killer. Jake the Ellimist's tool.
I sat up. I knew the voice. The droid stood by my desk. It wasn't large. It perched forward like one of those small dinosaurs. It had mean, smart eyes and a humanoid head. It was wrinkled, dark green or purple maybe. So dark it was almost black. The mocking mouth was lined with green. The droid was Krayak's creature, his emissary, his tool. Krayak was evil. A power so vast, so complete that only the Ellimist could keep him in check. A balance of terror, evil and good checking each other, limiting each other, making deals that affected the survival of entire solar systems. "Go away," I said to the Drode.
But you called me.
"Go back to Krayak. Leave me alone." The Drode smiled. He got up and moved closer. Closer till his face was only inches from my own.
There is a way out,
the Drode whispered.
Say the word. And it never was, Jake. Say the word, Jake. And you never walked through the construction site. Say the word, and you know nothing. No weight on your shoulders. Say the word.
"Go away," I said through gritted teeth.
How long till your cousin Rachel loses her grip? You know the darkness is growing inside her. How long till Tobias dies? A bird. A bird! How can he ever be happy? How long till Marco is forced to destroy his own controller mother? Will he survive that, do you think? How long, Jake? Till you kill Tom. Then what dreams will come? Jake the Yeerk Killer.
"Get out of here. Crawl back under your rock."
It will happen, Jake. You know that. The cave. The day will come. You know what the cave is, Jake. You know what it means, that dark cave. You know that death is within. When she dies, when Cassie dies, it will be at your word, Jake.
I covered my face with my hands.
My master Krayak offers you an escape. In his compassion, great Krayak has struck a deal with that meddling nitwit Elemist. Krayak would free you, Jake. Krayak would free you all. All will be as it would have been if you had simply taken a different path home.
I saw that moment again, at the mall, deciding whether to take the safe, well-lit, sensible way home, or the route that would take us through the construction site, and to a meeting that would change everything. Undo it. Undo it all. No more war. No more pain and fear and guilt.
Just one word, Jake,
the Drode whispered.
No, two, I think. One must not sacrifice good manners. 2 words, and it never was. 2 words and you know nothing, have no power, no responsibility.
What words?
One is Krayak. The other is please.
I wanted to say no. I wanted to say no. I opened my mouth to speak.
Oh, forget it. Never mind,
the Drode said angrily. This is MacLeod Andrews. We hope that you have enjoyed this production of Animorphs, Megamorphs Book 4, Back to Before, by K.A. Applegate. This program was produced at Mosaic Audio and directed by Max Kessler. Executive producer Melissa Ellard. Print edition published by Scholastic Inc. Text copyright 2000 by Catherine Applegate. Production copyright 2024 by Scholastic Inc. Scholastic, Animorphs, and associated logos are trademarks and/or registered trademarks of Scholastic Inc. All rights reserved.